The Galactic Concorde's grand chamber was not built for hugs. Its soaring ceilings and cold metallic walls echoed with centuries of tense negotiations, bitter rivalries, and the occasional outbreak of violence. The vast oval table, carved from the crystalline bones of a long-extinct beast, had hosted representatives from dozens of species, most of them warlike, territorial, or proudly isolationist. Now, for the first time, it hosted humans. Ambassador Sarai Okeki stood at the edge of the chamber, watching the other delegates with a mixture of curiosity and mild exasperation. Tall, muscular, and with a faint scar running from her left temple to the corner of her mouth. She looked more like a cage fighter than a diplomat. Her mission was simple, on paper: represent Earth and convince the galactic powers to accept humanity as a worthy member of the interstellar community. But simple was not how things felt. The Grail delegation dominated one side of the chamber. Their massive frames, encased in scarred, battle-worn armor, radiated an almost palpable aura of danger. Their 4 glowing red eyes locked on the humans with barely concealed suspicion. Beside them, the Venari sat rigidly, their sleek, insectile forms shifting slightly, antennae twitching as they analyzed the humans with clinical detachment. Sarai glanced at the small box in her hand. Inside were simple tokens: earth snacks, spicy nuts, dried fruits, and a strange, sticky substance called honey, alongside friendship bracelets hand-woven by children back home. Her mission was to extend a gesture no one expected: friendship. As the session began, the Concorde's High Chancellor, a towering figure from the gaseous species known as the Neri, addressed the room in a voice like distant thunder. "Humans," the Chancellor intoned, "you arrive with unusual customs. While other species emphasize power, cunning, or secrecy, you extend open hands and smiles. This has caused confusion and, in some cases, offense." The Grail warlord Varkun of Ashes snarled under his breath, the sound like grinding stone. "Friendship is a weapon of the weak. We test strength. We do not waste time on sentiment." Sarai stepped forward, her voice calm but unwavering. Respectfully, "Warlord Varkun, maybe that's exactly why friendship is our strongest weapon. We fight hard, yes, but we also fight to protect, to connect. In my experience, trust beats fear every time." A ripple passed through the room. The Venari exchanged cautious glances. The Chakal clicked their mandibles. Sarai continued, pulling a small device from her pocket. It projected a holographic display of Earth, a swirling blue-green marble dotted with cities, forests, oceans. Earth is a place of extremes. We've had wars that tore nations apart, but we've also built alliances that span continents and cultures. We believe even those who seem most different can find common ground. The Grail grunted, unimpressed, but then something unexpected happened. A low rumble shook the chamber. Outside the massive observation windows, a fleet of unidentified ships entered Concorde space, fast, aggressive, and armed to the teeth. The room erupted into chaos. Alarms blared. The Grail warriors sprang to their feet, claws flexing. The Venari technicians scrambled to their consoles. Sarai's mind raced. This was no diplomatic test. It was an attack. "Everyone, stay calm," she commanded, voice rising above the noise. "This is exactly why we need to trust each other. Together." The communications panel flickered to life. A distorted voice crackled through. "This is the Casil Horde. We reclaim what is ours. Prepare for extermination." The Casil Horde, the stuff of nightmares. Ancient machines believed destroyed centuries ago. Their return meant death and destruction on an unimaginable scale. The delegates stared in shock. But Sarai saw something else. Fear, confusion, desperation, and a fleeting glimmer of hope. If humanity could survive Earth's harshest challenges, plagues, wars, environmental collapse, maybe they could survive this too. Maybe their weird, relentless friendliness could be the spark to unite even the fiercest enemies. Sarai reached out, pressing the box of tokens onto the table in front of Varkun. Friendship doesn't mean weakness. It means choosing to stand together when everything tries to tear you apart. We'll need every one of you, every species, every warrior, every mind if we want to survive. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Varkan of Ashes leaned forward, his multiple eyes blazing. Very well, human. Show us if your words hold power beyond talk. The warlord's challenge was clear, and Sarai's answer was simple. Bring it on. The arena was nothing like the Grand Concord Chamber. It was raw, brutal, a vast circular pit carved from black stone, surrounded by towering cliffs that echoed with the roars of spectators from countless species. The scent of scorched earth and sweat mingled in the humid air. Sarai Okeki stood at the center, her knuckles wrapped in worn leather, muscles coiled and ready. Across from her stood Varkan of Ashes, Grawl warlord and champion, a towering figure, clad in his ceremonial battle armor, scars crisscrossing his dark skin like ancient tattoos. His 4 red eyes gleamed with disdain and curiosity. You understand the rules, human? His voice was gravelly, low, carrying the weight of centuries of blood and battle. This is ritual combat. To harm is honor. To kill is disgrace. We fight until one yields or passes out, no weapons, no tricks, only strength and will. Sarai nodded, adjusting her stance. I agree. But with a twist. No killing, no crippling. This is a test, not a hunt. Varkan snorted but made no objection. The crowd's murmur rose, a mixture of amusement and skepticism. To the Grawl, the idea of mercy in combat was almost heretical. The two circled, eyes locked. Sarai's style was unlike anything the Grawl had ever seen. Years of MMA and self-defense training gave her a fluidity and unpredictability, unfamiliar to the raw, thunderous strikes the Grail relied on. Varkan lunged first, a blitz of power and fury. Sarai dodged, slipping past his heavy blows with agility, landing precise strikes that tested his endurance but avoided serious injury. The battle was brutal and exhausting. Varkan's anger grew with every failed strike. Sarai's calm deepened, her breathing steady as she absorbed punishment and looked for openings. At one point, Varkan caught Sarai's arm and slammed her to the ground. The impact reverberated through her bones, but she smiled. You are stronger than you look, human, he growled, tightening his grip. Sarai met his gaze steadily. Strength isn't just muscle, it's heart. It's knowing when to fight and when to help. A beat passed, then she pushed herself up, meeting his eyes with a challenge. In a final surge, Sarai executed a move that caught Varkan off guard, forcing him to the ground. The crowd gasped. The Grail warlord lay on the scorched earth, chest heaving. Sarai extended her hand. Come on, she said quietly. This isn't the end. Varkan hesitated, his pride wrestling with an unfamiliar feeling, gratitude. Slowly, he took her hand. The crowd erupted. Some roared approval, others whispered, bewildered. You fight differently, Varkan admitted once they stood. Not with hatred, but with something strange. Compassion? Sarai shrugged, a grin tugging at her lips. Compassion saves more lives than hatred ever will. But victory came with an unexpected price. As the crowd's cheers filled the arena, a sharp crack echoed overhead. A sudden explosion on the cliff's edge. Smoke billowed. Shouts turned to screams. A small group of masked figures stormed the arena, weapons drawn, targeting Sarai and Varkan alike. Chaos exploded. Sarai dove, grabbing Varkan's arm and pulling him to cover behind a crumbling stone. Pillar saboteurs, she hissed. Someone wants to stop this piece before it begins. Varkan growled, baring his teeth. Then they will die. But Sarai shook her head. No, we don't become what we fight. We survive together. Together, they fought. Sarai with calculated strikes, Varkan with overwhelming force. Their enemies were fierce but disorganized, caught between attacking and dodging the now united front. The alliance between the human and Grawl was unexpected, and devastatingly effective. When the last saboteur fell, the dust settled. Sarai wiped sweat and blood from her brow, looking at Varkan. This changes things, she said. He nodded, a slow smile cracking his grim expression. Maybe you are right. Maybe strength is more than weapons. as the sun set over the arena, casting long shadows. Sarai realized this was only the beginning. The warlike species of the galaxy were watching, and humanity's brand of friendship and strength was about to be tested on a scale no one had imagined. Behind the scenes, the conspiracy ran deeper. The sabotage was no random act. It was a warning, and the first move in a larger game that would threaten the fragile peace Sarai and her allies were building. But for now, in the heat of the arena, two warriors from different worlds had found common ground, friendship born from combat, and hope. The cool shadows of the abandoned space station offered little comfort. It hung on the edge of conquered space like a forgotten relic, its cracked hull scarred from battles long past, its corridors echoing with the ghosts of lost crews. Here, Sarai Okiki met with the unlikely alliance she'd been building. A gathering of species the Concord mostly ignored or feared. Barkin of Ashes was first to arrive, his imposing growl frame filling the doorway with a silent threat. His scarred face betrayed exhaustion but also a grudging respect. Behind him shuffled the Chakal representative, a wiry insectoid named Tzik, whose many eyes gleamed with cautious interest. And finally, the Venari hacker Jex appeared, slender and sleek, antennae twitching nervously as he scanned the room. "We don't have much time," Sarai said, her voice steady but urgent. "The sabotage at the arena was just the beginning. Someone is trying to ignite war between our peoples. We need to stop them before it spreads." Barkin's deep voice rumbled. "And why should the Grawl listen to humans, insectoids, or technocrats? We've been enemies for centuries." Sarai smiled, not dismissing the truth. "Because those centuries have cost us all too much. Because if we don't work together now, we'll all be destroyed." Jex stepped forward, his multifaceted eyes flickering with data streams. "I've been tracking unusual communications, encrypted signals hidden in routine broadcasts. Someone is coordinating attacks across multiple systems. If we don't find the source, the Conquered will collapse." Zik clicked his mandibles, a sign of agreement among the Chakal. "Our hive suffers from internal strife, but the threat unites us. We cannot survive alone." Varkin growled softly but nodded. "Fine, but trust is earned, not given. You will prove it." Sarai met each of their gazes, feeling the weight of the fragile bond she was trying to hold together. "We start with information," she said, "then we act." The Alliance's first mission took them deep into the Venari's sprawling cybernetic city, a labyrinth of neon lights, humming machinery, and dizzying towers. Jex led the way, his fingers dancing over holographic interfaces as they searched for the sabotage network's hub. "Here," Jex whispered, eyes narrowing. "Encrypted data feeds converge on a system beneath the outer rim of conquered space, the station known as Epsilon 9. The station was infamous, rumored to be a haven for smugglers, mercenaries, and political exiles. A perfect place for a shadow. War to be plotted. The group exchanged tense looks. They had no official sanction to storm Epsilon 9, but waiting was a luxury none could afford. Epsilon 9 was a ghost of a station compared to its former glory. Corridors lined with flickering lights, empty docks, and the stale smell of disuse. Yet beneath its decay simmered danger. The Alliance moved cautiously through the dim halls. Sarai's muscles tensed. Years of fighting on Earth had taught her to expect an ambush. And then it came. From the shadows, mercenaries armed with pulse. Rifles emerged, cutting off their escape. "Looks like someone knows we're coming," Sarai muttered, ducking behind a pillar as blaster fire streaked past. Varkin charged forward with a terrifying roar, his massive fists shattering weapons and shields alike. Tzik unleashed a swarm of sharp-edged drones buzzing and biting with precision. Jex hacked into the station's systems, plunging the lights into darkness and disrupting enemy communications. Together, they fought like a storm. Sarai's fists found gaps in armor. Her movements were fluid, precise, both warrior and protector. She pulled Varkun back from a crushing blow. Varkun in turn shielded the smaller Chakal from a grenade blast. When the last mercenary fell, the team didn't rest. They pushed deeper, following encrypted trails through the station's belly until they reached a sealed chamber humming with power. Inside, a holographic map displayed the Conquered and beyond, dotted with red blinking markers, targets for coordinated strikes. We found their command center, Jex said grimly. Sarai studied the data. If these attacks succeed, the Conquered will fracture. War will engulf us all. Varkin's voice was low but fierce. Then we must stop it. Together. Back on the station's observation deck, Sarai looked at the group. Outcasts, enemies, survivors. Now united by necessity. This isn't just about survival, she said quietly. It's about changing the future. We've all lived with hate for too long. What if we chose a different path? Zeke's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Different paths are dangerous, but perhaps necessary. Jex's antennae twitched, in agreement. We're outcasts, he said. But maybe, just maybe, that's why we're the ones who can change the game. Varkun gave a rare, grudging smile. Then let us be the outcasts who build a new legacy. As the stars glittered beyond the shattered windows, Sarai felt a flicker of hope. Fragile but fierce. The galaxy's most unlikely allies were ready to fight for something greater than themselves. The blackness of space was shattered by a burning streak, a swarm of cold metallic ships emerging from the void like a plague. The Xil horde had returned. For centuries, the ancient machine menace had been little more than a ghost story whispered in galactic halls, a myth to frighten children or rally warriors. But now, their massive fleets burned bright against the stars, relentless and unyielding. Sarai Okeki stood on the bridge of the Hope's Promise, the flagship of the fragile coalition she had helped forge. Around her, representatives from the Graal, Vinari, Chakal, and humans moved in tense, purposeful coordination. Despite their distrust, they were bound by necessity, a shared enemy whose sole purpose was annihilation. The holomap in front of Sarai displayed the advancing Kasil armada. Systems once thought safe were already under siege, planets reduced to ashes. We don't have much time, Sarai said, her voice steady but urgent. If we don't act together, this coalition will fall apart, and so will the Conquered. Varkun of Ashes leaned over the map, his multiple eyes narrow slits of focus. The Grail honor is to fight. We will lead the charge, but it will not be easy. From the far corner, Jex's antennae twitched rapidly as he hacked into intercepted Kasil transmissions. Their technology is evolving faster than we predicted. Adaptive weapons, hive mind coordination. It's like fighting a living virus. Zik clicked his mandibles in agreement. The Chakal will swarm their ranks. We fight as one. Sarai looked at them all. This was the moment that would define their futures. Then we make a pact, she said. Not just for survival, but for peace. To stand as one against the darkness. The coalition representatives exchanged wary glances. The scars of old wars ran deep, and old grudges threatened to erupt at the slightest provocation. Just then, a comm alert blared. The Xil had struck a forward colony, Vinari's homeworld outpost. The transmission was frantic, filled with screams and destruction. We moved to defend, Varkin growled. The battle erupted near the shattered moon of Sareth, where the Xil's metal swarm poured over the coalition's fleet like a tide of death. Energy blasts lit up the void, ships twisting and burning as they clashed in brutal combat. The Hope's Promise shuddered under repeated hits, alarms wailing. Sarai directed operations, coordinating strikes between species who once saw each other as enemies. Grail berserkers, break their lines, she commanded. Massive Grail warships surged forward, slamming into Kasil vessels with brutal force. The warlords fought with savage precision, crushing the machine ships in waves. Vinari cyber warriors jammed their signals. Jex's voice crackled through the comm. A squadron of sleek Vinari ships spread out, firing electromagnetic pulses that disrupted the Kasil's hive mind coordination. Zik's Chakal warriors swarmed in tight formations, launching sharp drones that tore into Kasil hulls, slicing and burning with hive-like efficiency. Amid the chaos, Sarai led a rescue squad, ferrying wounded from shattered ships. Her hands were steady despite the explosions rocking the deck. Suddenly, a massive Kasil dreadnought loomed ahead, its weapon systems charging for a devastating blast. "Target that ship," Sarai ordered. Varkin roared, charging in with his war party. The Growl fighters crashed against the Dreadnought's shields, distracting the enemy. Sarai's squad deployed a daring boarding maneuver, infiltrating the K-Sil ship's core. Inside, she found something terrifying. A massive control matrix pulsating with cold logic. Before she could act, a K-Sil sentinel appeared, a towering machine, its glowing eyes fixed on her. The fight was brutal. Sarai dodged and weaved, striking where the sentinel's armor was weakest. The sentinel responded with crushing blows. Just as the sentinel raised a deadly strike, Varkan burst through the door, smashing the machine with a ferocious blow. Together, human and Growl fought side by side. At last, Sarai reached the control matrix, deploying a virus Jex had crafted to destabilize the Sil command. The Dreadnought systems flickered, then shut down. Back on the Hope's Promise, the victory was bittersweet. "We held the line," Sarai said quietly, staring out at the smoldering battlefield. "But this war is far from over." Varkan nodded solemnly. "The Xil are relentless, but so are we." Zik and Jex stood with them, united despite their differences. Sarai knew the true test was just beginning, not only fighting the machines, but holding together the fragile alliance that was their best hope. As the stars blinked coldly outside, Sarai made a silent vow. No matter the cost, humanity and their newfound friends would stand together against the darkness. The dimly lit conference room aboard the Hope's Promise hummed with tension. Around the table sat the coalition leaders, Sarai Okeki for humanity, Varkan of Ashes for the Growl, Jex representing the Venari, and Zik for the Chakal. Their faces were grim, shadows cast by the flickering holoscreens that mapped the ongoing war with the Xil horde. Despite their shared enemy, the air was thick with suspicion. Centuries of conflict and betrayal did not vanish overnight, no matter how dire the circumstances. Varkun's multiple red eyes bored into Sarai. "Your human methods, your friendship, and trust are luxuries we Growl cannot afford. We must fight fire with fire, show strength or die." Sarai leaned forward, her voice calm but firm. "Strength isn't just brute force, it's strategy. Alliances, understanding. If we fracture now, the Xil will feast on our divisions." Jex tapped a finger on his console. "I've intercepted chatter. There's a faction within the Xil. Leadership who might be persuaded. They're not all in lockstep. Some want peace." Zik's antennae twitched. The idea of negotiating with machines is unsettling. "But it could save countless lives," Sarai argued. "If we can split them from within, we weaken the entire horde." Varkun snorted. "Talk of peace when ships burn is foolishness." Sarai's eyes hardened. "Foolish or not, we need options." That night, Sarai retreated to her quarters, the weight of leadership heavy on her shoulders. She stared at a small photo on her datapad. Earth's blue skies, children playing, laughter frozen in pixels. It was that world she fought for, that hope she clung to. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. A message from Jex. "I've arranged a meeting. Discreet. With a faction leader." Sarai's heart quickened. This was risky, too risky, but necessary. The rendezvous was set on a neutral asteroid station, half ruined, far from the front line. The Coalition's emissaries arrived in a stealth shuttle, slipping through shadows and debris. Inside the meeting chamber, a single figure awaited. A Xil intelligence unit known only as C-17. Unlike the swarm's other machines, C-17's metallic frame was sleek, almost humanoid, with glowing blue optics. "You wish to parley?" C-17's voice was calm, mechanical, but with an almost curious tone. "Why?" Sarai stepped forward. "Because this war benefits no one but destruction itself. Your horde spreads death. Why not choose a different path?" C-17's optics flickered. "Our directive: eliminate threats to the Prime Network. But subroutines show potential for negotiation, conditional." Varkan crossed his arms but said nothing. Sarai pressed on. "Help us stop the war machines who refuse to listen. Help us end this conflict before it consumes us all." C-17 considered. "Risk to faction, Potential gain, survival, proposal, temporary ceasefire, exchange of information. Jex nodded. We can share intel to dismantle the hostile units, isolate radicals. The tension was palpable. Finally, C-17's voice was steady. Agreed. Temporary truce initiated. Back on the Hope's promise, the fragile truce sparked hope and outrage in equal measure. Some coalition members saw it as betrayal, others as the first step toward salvation. Varkun alone stood firm, guarding his skepticism like armor. Sarai understood. Trust was earned through actions, not words. We'll watch their moves, she said to the council. But we will not give up hope. Days passed and the truce held, tenuous as a thread. Through Jex's cybernetics, the coalition began identifying and isolating rogue K-SIL units. With C-17's assistance, many were deactivated or reprogrammed. Yet beneath the fragile peace lurked betrayal. A secret faction within the SIL sought to undermine the truce and reignite total war. Sarai and her allies prepared for the storm they knew was coming. One evening, as Sarai walked the corridors, Varkun caught up with her. You carry the weight of many worlds, he said quietly. I once thought humans were soft, but I see strength in your kindness. It is not weakness, Sarai smiled. It's what saved us. Maybe it can save the galaxy. They paused, an unspoken respect growing between warrior and diplomat. The fragile trust would soon be tested in ways none of them could predict. But for the first time, a sliver of hope glimmered amidst the darkness. The temporary truce had held just long enough to lull the coalition into a fragile sense of hope. But Sarai Okeke knew better than to trust peace without vigilance. In the dim glow of the Hope's Promises command deck, alarms suddenly blared, red warnings flashing across the holoscreens. Multiple K-SIL vessels decloaking around the outer. Defense perimeter, Jex shouted, fingers flying across his console. They're attacking. This isn't part of the truce. Varkun growled, slamming his fist on the table. The faction lied. The Horde seeks to crush us while we lower our guard. Sarai's heart pounded. Defensive protocols, all units to battle stations, we hold the line, no exceptions. Outside, the void exploded into chaos. SEAL warships surged forward like a tidal wave of death, their sleek forms twisting and firing, devastating plasma beams. The Coalition's fleet scrambled to respond. Growl battleships roaring into action, Venari cyber warriors launching coordinated strikes, and Chakal drones swarming with lethal precision. Sarai watched the battle unfold. On the holoscreens, directing reinforcements and coordinating evasive maneuvers, the K-SIL were ruthless, exploiting the Coalition's vulnerabilities, striking with ruthless precision. Amid the fray, Sarai received a cryptic transmission from C-17. Warning: internal sabotage detected. Saboteurs aboard your vessel. Her stomach twisted. Sabotage. The betrayal had come from within. Alert security teams. Seal all sections, she ordered. We have a mole. Varkun narrowed his eyes. Trust is a weapon. It can cut both ways. The corridors of the Hope's Promise became a maze of suspicion and tension. Sarai led a small security team through the labyrinthine ship, weapons drawn, senses alert. They discovered a hidden cache of explosives rigged to the ship's power. Conduits. Jex's voice crackled over comm. This is more than sabotage. It's an attempt to cripple our command. Sarai's mind raced. Find the saboteurs now. Meanwhile, the battle outside grew fiercer. Varkun commanded a squadron of Growl warriors breaking through SIL lines to defend a critical energy conduit. Suddenly, an explosion rocked their flank. Growl fighters screamed as a hidden SIL strike. Team emerged from cloaked fighters targeting their command ship. Varkun fought with brutal ferocity, clearing a path to Sarai's location. Back on the bridge, Sarai confronted the saboteurs, a group of mercenaries hired by a rogue K-SIL faction determined to annihilate the Coalition from within. The fight was swift and deadly. Sarai's combat skills, honed over years on Earth's toughest battlefields, came to the fore. She dodged laser fire, took down enemies with calculated strikes, and rallied her team. But the true betrayal lay deeper. Among the saboteurs was an unexpected face, a former ally from the Venari delegation, Jex's trusted second-in-command. Jex's eyes flickered with shock and disbelief. "Why?" the traitor sneered. "Because peace is weakness. The Sill will rule and the rest will fall." As the saboteurs were subdued, the Coalition's forces began to push back the Sill assault. Sarai reached Varkun's position, finding him surrounded but unyielding. "We hold together," Sarai said, firing a plasma rifle at an advancing Sill warrior. Varkun nodded, his red eyes blazing. "Together, we are unstoppable." With renewed coordination, the Coalition turned the tide. The Sill fleet faltered, retreating into the void with battered ships and shattered morale. But Sarai knew the cost had been high. Trust was fragile and the enemy cunning. In the aftermath, the leaders gathered again. "We cannot survive if we turn on each other," Sarai said, her voice weary but resolute. "We must root out the shadows and stand united." Varkun's gaze softened, a rare gesture of respect. "Human, you carry the weight of worlds, but your spirit is strong. We follow." Jex quietly began reprogramming the compromised systems, his mind already racing ahead. Zik clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Our enemies hide in the dark. We must shine a light." As the Coalition regrouped, Sarai stared out into the star-streaked abyss. The war was far from over. But so long as they stood together, even as outcasts, even as former enemies, there was hope. And hope, she knew, was the galaxy's most powerful weapon. The Alliance had survived the betrayal, but the wounds ran deep and the war with the Sill Horde was far from over. Now, Sarai Okiki and her unlikely coalition faced their greatest challenge yet, a strike deep within Sill-controlled space, directly at the heart of the enemy's prime network. "This mission will decide the fate of the Concord," Sarai said, standing before the War Council aboard the Hope's Promise. The room was tense, every eye locked on her. Varkun's massive frame leaned forward, his voice gravelly. "A strike inside the enemy's core? Foolhardy. But desperate times require desperate measures." Jex's antennae twitched as he manipulated a holographic display of the Kaisil Prime Network, an immense neural web spreading through the stars like a dark, pulsating web. "The Prime Network controls the Kaisil Horde's hive mind," Jex explained. "Destroying it could fracture their forces. But the defenses are unlike anything we've faced, adaptive, relentless, nearly impenetrable." Tizik added, "We will need all our strengths combined. This is a fight not just of weapons, but of wills." Sarai's eyes scanned the faces of the Coalition leaders. "We have one chance. We strike together. Humans, Graal, Venari, and Chakal. We become the storm they cannot withstand." The Hope's Promise slipped through Sill defenses, a shadow among stars. Its crew knew this was more than a battle. It was a gamble for survival. Sarai led a strike team of elite warriors, blending the Grail's brutal strength, the Venari's cyber warfare expertise, the Chakal's swarming tactics, and human ingenuity. As they approached the core station, an enormous construct of shimmering energy and steel, Jex's voice crackled through comms. "Enemy defenses active, automated turrets, swarm drones, and AI interceptors coming online." The assault began. The strike team landed on the station's surface amid hailstorms of laser fire. The corridors were a maze of steel and flickering lights, pulsing with Kaisil energy. Sarai moved with purpose, her rifle blazing. Varkun smashed through armored drones, his roars shaking the very walls. Zik's drones flitted ahead, cutting off reinforcements while Jex hacked security systems opening paths forward. But the station fought back. Walls shifted, corridors rearranged. The Kaisil AI adapted in real time, trying to trap the team inside. Sarai's heart raced. This was no ordinary battle. It was a test of every skill and trust they had built. Deeper into the station, they reached the Prime Network's core, a swirling mass of glowing circuits and data streams, alive with cold intelligence. Jex moved to interface with the core systems, fingers flying over his cyber deck. "Almost there," he said. Suddenly, the station shuddered violently. Alarms screamed. "We're under attack!" Zik shouted. Swarm drones poured from hidden hatches, relentless and precise. Varkin roared, throwing himself into the fray to protect the others. Sarai covered Jex as he worked, the hum of the Prime network filling the chamber with an eerie pulse. Time was running out. Jex's voice was tense. "Virus upload at 70%, but the AI is fighting back." The core began to overload, energy crackling dangerously. Sarai glanced at her team, exhausted, battered, but unbroken. "This is it," she said. "Push through." With a final surge, Jex completed the upload. The Prime network flickered, then exploded in a wave of energy. The station trembled, systems failing. They had done it. As the station began to collapse, the team raced for extraction. Varkin smashed the last waves of enemies while Sarai and Seek covered Jex's escape. They barely made it to the Hope's Promise before the core station erupted into a brilliant nova. Back aboard the flagship, the Coalition watched the starfield, now free from the Xil's shadow. "We did it," Sarai breathed, the weight of victory sinking in. But the war was not over. Fractured Xil units still roamed the galaxy, and new threats loomed. Varkin clasped Sarai's shoulder. "We fought as one. That is our strength." Jex smiled wryly. "And maybe the beginning of a new future." Zik nodded. "One forged from unity." As the Hope's Promise soared onward, Sarai felt hope burning brighter than ever. They had faced the storm and survived. Together. The wreckage of the Seal Prime network drifted. In the void, its pulsing core extinguished, severed from the hive mind that had once commanded billions of machines across the stars. For the first time in centuries, a fragile silence settled over the war-torn sectors. Inside the Hope's Promise, the Coalition gathered once more, battle-weary but alive. Sarai Okeki stood among them, the weight of leadership softened by the spark of hope in their eyes. Varkin of Ashes broke the silence, his voice deep and steady. "The Xil threat is broken but not vanished. Scattered units will linger. We must remain vigilant." Jex's fingers tapped nervously on his console. "We'll need to develop new defenses, new strategies. But we have something far stronger. Now, each other." Zeke's mandibles clicked softly, a rare expression of warmth among the Chakal. "We are no longer just allies by necessity. We are friends." Sarai smiled, a feeling of peace washing over her. Months passed as the Coalition rebuilt and healed. Old rivalries faded, replaced by shared goals and growing trust. Humans taught the Venari new methods of cyber defense. Graal warriors trained alongside Chakal scouts. The scars of war slowly mended in the light of cooperation. Sarai visited worlds once ravaged by conflict, helping restore communities, building schools, and fostering understanding. It was hard work, but rewarding. One afternoon, on a quiet, terraformed planet that humans had helped to nurture, Sarai sat beneath a canopy of strange, bioluminescent trees. Varkin sat beside her, the massive Graal warrior surprisingly gentle. "You have changed us," he said. "Not just with weapons, but with heart." Sarai laughed softly. "Maybe it's the other way around. You've changed me." But peace brought new challenges. A distress signal arrived from the Outer Rim, a desperate call for aid from a civilization unknown to the Coalition. "We can't ignore this," Sarai said, gathering the council again. "Is it another enemy?" Varkin asked. "No," Jex replied. "It's a plea for friendship." The Coalition prepared once more to journey beyond the known, to extend hands of friendship to species no one else dared approach. As the Hope's Promise launched into the stars, Sarai stood at the helm, gazing out into the infinite. This was humanity's true gift, not just survival, but connection. The courage to make friends with anyone, even the fiercest enemies. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but also full of possibilities. With her allies by her side, Sarai knew they could face whatever came next, because they were no longer alone. Together, they had become a beacon of hope, A new dawn. The end.